Hello and welcome back. Before we start creating the methods for our consumers in the notification service, we just need to briefly talk about some methods that are available in a channel. And as we know, a channel in Rabbitmq is like a virtual connection inside the connection. And every message, routing, consumption of the messages, everything is done over a channel. And in our code, when we created the connection, if you remember, the method returns a channel. Now, you remember this images right here, the interprocess communication, okay? In the notification service, which is where we are currently working on, you can see that the notification service doesn't produce any message. Okay, it doesn't send any messages. It only receives or consumes messages, and it consumes messages from the authentication service, from the order service, and from the chat service. Okay, so we are going to create methods to consume messages from the auth service, from the order service, and from the chat service. We could decide to use just one method and then use a condition if the message where pass a particular property. Okay, if this message is from auth, do this. If it's from order, do that. If it's from chat, do this. Okay, but we are going to see how to create methods to consume the messages from the different services. Okay, so we are currently focusing on our notification service. It doesn't send any message, it only receives messages. Now let us talk about some of the Rabbitmq channel methods that we are going to use. Okay, now remember, a channel is a virtual connection inside a connection, and everything we need to do, publishing of messages, routing of messages, consuming, they all have to be done over a channel. So the first channel methods, there are multiple methods, okay, but for our own use case, that we're only going to talk about the methods we are going to use or we will use in this course. Okay, so the first method is the channel.publish method. Okay, so the publish method, actually it publishes a message or messages to an exchange. Okay, remember that Rabbitmq, the producer, does not send messages directly to queues. In fact, the producer has no idea if the messages will be received by a queue or will be consumed by a consumer. All it does is it sends messages to an exchange. Now, an exchange is found inside the message broker. So you have a message broker, and inside you have your exchange, you have your routing key, and then you have your queues. Okay, so the channel.publish method publish a message to an exchange. So every message that will be produced will be sent to a particular exchange, and then that exchange will use a routing key to send it to the respective queue. Then we have channel.assert exchange. Now this asserts an exchange into existence. Okay, it creates an exchange. When publishing a message, we usually pass the exchange name and a routing key. Okay, so in the publish method, we pass an exchange name, we pass a routing key, and we can pass also the message that we want to send. And then the assert exchange will check, okay, does this exchange actually exist? Okay, so if it exists, then it's going to check for the routing key and then use it to send the message to the appropriate queue. So when we publish, we are going to also call the assert exchange. Now in this assert exchange, we pass the exchange name, we pass the type. Remember, we have multiple different types of exchanges. We have the direct exchange, we have the fan out, we have the topic, we have headers exchange. Okay, so when we call this assert exchange, we pass the exchange name and then we pass the type. There are other options we can pass, like durable, auto delete. We will take a look at all those later. Another method is the assert queue. Now this assert queue here, it checks if a queue exists. So after the exchange receives the messages, then it uses the routing key to send the messages to the queue. Then the assert queue will check if the queue exists. Okay, if it does not exist, it will create a new queue. Okay, so if you have a queue maybe for sellers, the asset exchange or asset queue will check, okay, does this queue exist? If it does not, then it creates the queue. Then another method is the bind queue. Now the bind queue, what it does simply is just to create a routing path from an exchange to a queue. Remember that the exchange will use the routing key to direct the messages to the specific queues. Now this bind queue is what creates the routing path between the exchange and a queue. Okay, so when we call the bind queue with the bind key or the routing key, it will create the path between the exchange and the queue. Then another method is the channel.consume. Now this sets up a consumer with a callback to be invoked with each message. Now this is the method that will be used to actually consume the messages that is coming from the exchange via the routing key. Okay, so this will be the consumer, and it will invoke a callback, and then inside we can do whatever we want to do with the messages. And then lastly, we have the channel.ack. Now this ack is the method that acknowledges the given message. So whatever message that is published, sent via the exchange through the routing key, if we can decide, okay, do we want to acknowledge? Now if we acknowledge the message, then it will be removed from the queue. But if we consume the message and we do not acknowledge, the message will just remain in the queue. And if you do that, it could get to a point the queue could become full, and then you start having problems with your queue. Okay, so there's also the ack all. If you want to acknowledge all message, if you have multiple messages and you want to acknowledge all at the same time, you can use the ack all. But this channel.ack, each message that is consumed, because we are going to publish one message at a time. Okay, so each message that is consumed, we will just acknowledge them after using probably consuming the message and then doing whatever we need to do with those messages. So these are the channel methods that we are really going to work with. There are multiple methods, but these are the ones that we really are going to use. Other methods, probably you can check the documentation for Rabbitmq or also the AMQP lib to see the other channel methods.